Welcome to Tracy Tully Talks, sharing with you conversations relevant today, tomorrow, and in the future. Hi, Tracy here. Greetings from Australia, and thank you for joining us today for the second episode of Sins of the Father with author Carlton Sinn. I am absolutely falling in love with the enchanting characters, plots, and places brought to life by Carlton Sinn in his new book, Sins of the Father. Here with me today is author Carlton Sinn to tell us more about his fantastic book. Excited to have you join me today, Carlton.
Excited as always. Thanks for having me, Tracy.
Lovely to see you again. Righto, well, let's delve into your book. You have created a fantasy world around a mythical place called Dargathnon. Could you tell me about this fascinating realm?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dargathnon is sort of this very, very large land mass. And to give you some perspective, it's about the same size as the continental United States of America. So it's very, very, very large. It's not something that you can hop, skip, and jump across. It's massive, basically. It's got several different kingdoms and empires and factions of elves and dwarves that all live within. And the best part about it is you get to go in there and almost experience what it would be like if America itself had these different factions and they lived in different areas, and the culture and the names of different places are different in different regions because they have their own culture, their own unique flavor to them, if you will. And I think that was quite enjoyable to sort of create from scratch, to make this world big enough to have differences that we would find in the real world in a story, as opposed to everybody being kind of the same, looking the same, acting the same. There's a lot of diversity in the places and characters in Dargathnon.
So whilst you were creating that, you would have been multitasking. So you would have had lots of different places in that realm to be focusing on. So you'll be doing a shift from one back to the other and across to weave everything together, and a bit like a rug, woven really tightly. So that there's these communities, there's these micro communities going on in this fascinating realm that you have, Dargathnon.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I'm not much of a knitter myself, but I have seen my wife do some pretty good blankets. But yeah, it was great, and part of the beauty of the story is it doesn't start that not everybody that you care about and that you are following comes from the same place. So there is a very stark contrast, not just from the character perspective, but also where they live, how they grow up, and their cultural differences that they have are very, very stark from the beginning, and creating that certainly helped me keep everything separate until it was time to bring them together. And I think it adds a lot of depth and realness to the story, because there is so much flavor there that you can pick up and enjoy and appreciate. And I think I mentioned in the last episode my love of history and reading about these different cultures, from ancient Greece to Rome to the Germanic tribes and everything in between. It was just a fascinating time for me to kind of get to create a little bit of mythology and history of my own. And I think it's quite cool, quite nifty.
It's very unique. It is very nifty and very cool, that's for sure. So together with your graphic designer, you've produced an intricate map, and I love maps in books, and the intricate map of Dargathnon, so that readers can follow very closely the characters' movements around this mythical world. How long did it actually take to create together that map?
Oh yeah, the map was one of the longest sort of labors of love, I think. In a lot of ways, the story was sort of easier to come up with than the map itself. So it went through many different iterations as I continued to add new things, new layers, more places, much to the chagrin of my mate who's doing all the drawings. He had to kind of redo a bunch. But yeah, it just became more and more detailed as the world grew. And I think I had a trilogy in mind when I started on this journey, and I think that's probably not going to happen. There's just too much to cover, and the way the story's grown, I think really organically goes to how good the map is and how real it is, because you can't go past these places without spending some real time there, because it is different and it is unique, and it's worthwhile as a reader and as a character to sit back and go, oh, maybe I will have a beer in the pub at this, at Barbaros, or I'll go through to Gorganos or something, and just enjoy the different scenery and the shows and what that city has to offer and why that city's different and spoken of in a high regard. On the map, if when you are reading the book, I think it's quite cool and clever. But I've enlarged the cities to sort of demonstrate how big and populous and powerful they are. So there are very, very big cities on the map, and there are very, very small cities on the map. And I think the contrast is very good to just instantly recognize when you are following along where our characters are going. You can see if they're passing through sort of smaller towns or larger cities. And it's a nice way of sort of being able to delineate between the two at a glance. And it is, like you said, it's quite a detailed map. So there's a lot of information to unpack there, and there's a lot that sets up the story going forward, and it informs how the characters are able to travel and where they're able to travel to and how fast it is, because it would be a very, very long journey to take, a horse across the realm. So they take boats and they take ships and a lot of other modes of transport to move around. And I think that's pretty cool. And that certainly changed the way that I was able to tell the story, because it takes a long time to get across the realm. There's no Twitter, so it takes time to get
No
the message across. No airplanes. Yeah, so it's sort of in a way it's cool as a reader. You get to read things and you see characters that don't have all the information that you have because they simply can't know yet. Carrier pigeons are only so fast, so it takes a little bit of time for things to catch up, and you see some of the real challenges, I suppose, of life in the past is operating without knowing what we would know almost instantly today. I mean, if a war breaks out in Europe and we know about it as it's happening, and in times past it would take days, weeks, months for that news to reach the important players around the world. So certainly an interesting dynamic at play, and certainly one of those things that I very much enjoyed creating.
I love that about the map. I love maps in books, that's for sure. And what it does is it draws the reader right into the map. So you are visualizing in your mind exactly where you are placed at that moment in that chapter in your book. And as you said, what I love that you've done is you've been able to draw the readers once again into this world where you don't know what's happening really around you, and it's putting you right back in the historical times, so that you have to do some problem solving. You have to sort of think of some solutions yourself. I wonder what's going to happen next. Is this going to happen, or is this going to happen? And keep going back and looking at the map. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, part of the story, I've had things change. I had to redraft chapters because I would write most of the outlines, and I have the map next to me so that I could, it sounds pretty nerdy, but I would do use the key at the top and measure out how far the distances were, and if people could make it to the right place in time, or have to kind of stop, and then I have to change sort of my story and extend bits and shorten bits based on how long it would take for the characters to get to and from different areas. So it's certainly very, very important. It's something that I think is a tremendous resource, and something that really amplifies the story, is going back and looking at the map and appreciating the depth that is there. And it's a pretty looking map too. So the first time you get to have a look at it, it's quite nice, I think. And a lot of depth, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of love went into that map.
It's
so
lovely. Yeah, and you can see that a lot of love has gone into that map, and a lot of thought, incredible amount of thought, to be able to write a book and the journey and build it as you go around a map. And this is something that our readers and our listeners will be interested and intrigued with, how you use that. to grow your story. So that brings us to our next question. I love the idea that you have an actual map included in your book. Well done. Can you explain to us how Dargathnon actually exists?
Yeah, absolutely. So it does exist in its sort of own sort of world. I think growing up, on the kind of classics, Homer and the Iliad and the Odyssey, those sort of books, I've basically created an alternate space for Dargathnon to exist, and that typically looks like the Middle Ages in Europe. And I've incorporated almost all of the mythology I could find that I quite enjoy. So it's very selective to what I like, about basically the Western canon up to Aquinas in the 12th century, and basically made that world around, or made Dargathon around that. So you'll find, werewolves and griffins and things like that in the world. It's not sort of Earth; it's a very different place, but it's a large enough. It's a large enough place and space for the story to unfold very naturally. And there's certainly talk of lands beyond Dargathon, but unfortunately, for me and everybody else, I don't have anything for that just yet. But there is certainly more beyond the sort of horizon, and it maybe even in the future there'll be some more stories to accompany that. But there is characters that have left sort of the mainland, as you will, and travel to lands beyond, and then come back with tales of older magic and mysteries and mythology that is beyond the realm of understanding. And that, I think, is also very reminiscent of 12th century Europe. People didn't know the New World existed, and if you told them that the Americas were right around the corner, they wouldn't have believed you, or wouldn't have been able to get to them. Probably is more accurate. Until they were able to a couple hundred years later. And I think that's really exciting to sort of live in the world and experience that kind of that most enviable human trait, is to explore and discover and conquer. So having that on the horizon of many of the characters is certainly pretty nifty.
Oh, it's exciting, especially moving forward. I know our readers will want to know more, but we can't just yet. So
Not just yet.
not just yet, but there definitely is going to be something that's happening there, we know, in the future. So with Dargathnon, it's a land-based story. Is there much, like, I know you've got dragons and flying creatures in your adventure-filled fantasy world. So is there much of a story that happens above the land mass?
Oh, I certainly. I mean, most of the people in the earlier books, I don't want to spoil too much in the future, but there is some exciting sort of stuff that happens as we progress. But most of the story is sort of. I like humans. I think humans are infinitely fascinating and interesting. So most of the characters that we follow are humans, or they're sort of elves or dwarves that kind of amplify the human story. So unfortunately, elves, dwarves, and humans, they're all bipedal, so none of them can fly around just yet. But certainly, I think I can think of at least two occasions where a character looks at the sky and longs to be able to fly, because I think even if you've been on an airplane once, it's a pretty fantastic experience. And once you're up in the air, it's hard to not want to return to flying. And I think that's certainly something that, again, is a very, very human characteristic. And most of the story is on the land, but there are certainly tales on the sea. There's certainly creatures that fly, and there's dangers in the air. So there's certainly a few things around the corner that keep everybody on their toes.
Oh, that's exactly what we wanted to hear. What is actually going to happen out there, and it will make our soon-to-be readers very excited to pick up that book. Once again, I love the concept of the map, and the map is integral to your story. So how important is the map to Dargathnon in the story?
Yeah, it's massive. And I think, like, I would be surprised if when you're reading it, you don't flick back to the map very, very regularly, because of the way I've written the story and the way it is laid out with different characters in different places, you'll want to, I think, naturally go back to and find out where they are in relation to the other characters, and if they'll cross paths and when they'll cross paths and how they will cross paths in what circumstance, which is very, very cool. So I mentioned a bit earlier that I suddenly wrote a lot of the chapters with the map beside me. I've got a couple of A3 printouts at home that continue to be updated because I keep changing my mind on things, but I have the map there all the time because it's sort of the foundation from which I can build a lot of my story, because it helps me. Where are we going? We're going into this area. This is a different geography, a different topography, more mountainous. How are we going to describe people traveling? How is that going to impede people traveling? And that's on a very small level. And then you've got the bigger sort of cultural effect as we're going to a different set of lands controlled by different people with different names and speak different languages. And how is that going to be how is that going to impede our heroes, if you will, and what will that journey look like for them? Because as anyone who's taken a road trip knows, like, it's pretty exhausting to travel for a long time between destinations, and this is sort of the reality of our characters' lives. So the world is fantastic. The map is a resource that when I read the story back, I like to flick back through it as well and just keep my mind fresh on where everybody is in relation to one another, and how that informs the travel and what's actually going on. So tremendously important, the map.
Absolutely important. And I love the fact that you explained earlier that you've drilled right down to the micro level of when you write, you've researched on the scale of your map. You've actually gone to the scale of it, so that your reader can understand what it would be like walking in the boots of one of your main characters. Exciting.
It's a lot of walking. Yeah, no, exactly. Put your walking boots on. Everybody's walking around. So no, it's yeah, absolutely. I thought that was actually quite enjoyable, but I could just be a nerd, so I don't know. It could be enjoyable to see how far. I think I've researched how far a horse can ride in a single day a few times, and what's the likelihood of that happening 6 days in a row, and how to expand. And yeah, so that's interesting to me. I think it's kind of a little detailed, certainly not one of the major aspects, but if you're really into that kind of stuff, then you might also find that pretty exciting. So
well, definitely, it's definitely the fabric of your book, and it makes it more exciting. So Carlton, how can your readers learn more about you and Sins of the Father?
Yeah, no, I've got a website with all the details and the updates for the book, and a couple of little character previews, which I think are really, really well written, if I do say so myself. And that's at www.carltonsinn.com. That's CARLTON, S for Sam, INN for November.com. And you'll be able to pick up hopefully pre-orders pretty soon, and get a bit more information about the book and the story and where it's going, and hopefully that tantalizes you a little bit to want to pre-order the book and dive into the story.
Oh, definitely. I know our readers will want to pre-order, and they'll definitely want to dive into that fabulous story. This is our episode 2 of series 1. So thank you for listening to us on Tracy Tully Talks for inspirational talking points. And today we have Carlton Sinn with us, new author, and talking about his book Sins of the Father. You can find me on www.tracytullytalks.com, on my YouTube channel, and you'll be able to watch all of Carlton's series there, as well as on his own website, and that's www.carltonsinn.com. So thank you so much for being with us today, Carlton. I wish you all the very best, and I look forward to episode 3 with you.
Thanks very much, Tracy. Appreciate you having me as always.
Thank you. Cheers, everyone.